There are a lot of people through the ages who have broken the law for a higher moral cause. Sometimes that's what we have to do.
Welcome to our hen house. This is Jasmin Singer.
This is Mariann Sullivan.
And this week we're going to be welcoming Jennifer Raymond, who you may have heard of because she's the driving force behind uncovering the terrible scandal of Miranda's rescue in Humboldt County, California, which has seen such widespread coverage in the press. I'm really fascinated by this, and we have so much to discuss. In addition to her whistleblowing, she's also the founder of the Humboldt Spay and Neuter Network and Humboldt Critters Without Litters, and you might know her from this, the author of The Peaceful Palate, which is a vegan cookbook first published in, I think, the late 80s. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes.
Wow.
Back
So cool.
before vegan was a household word.
Totally. That's amazing. Well, welcome to our hen house, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So just before we get into our questions, and we have many, a quick reminder to our listeners and our viewers, our Hen House podcasts is sprinkled throughout your week. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, the Hen Report on Thursdays, and the long form interview on Fridays. So the bonus content for our Hen House flock members comes out on Mondays. Our Hen House is a podcast and on YouTube. Listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit subscribe and hit like whenever you can. Okay. So much to chat about. And Jennifer, before we get into the mind-blowing story of Miranda's rescue, I want to know who you are. I want people to know who you are. So you have been an animal activist for many years. Can you give our listeners a bit of that history?
Sure. I have been an animal lover my whole life. When I was about 10 years old, I announced that I never wanted children. I just wanted animals. And I started actually volunteering when I was in college, working with a spay neuter voucher program. I also became a vegetarian when I was very young. I had rescued some baby birds that had fallen to the ground when boys shot their parents. And I was feeding them, and I was told you had to feed them every 2 hours. So I was getting up in the night to feed these baby birds. And I had just fed them when my mom called me in for dinner. And I went in and I sat down, and there was a chicken wing on my plate. A light bulb went off in my head.
Wow.
And I realized that it was the same sort of animal that I was getting up every 2 hours to feed. And I decided right then and there I wasn't eating any more dead animals. I was actually told by my grandmother that if I didn't eat meat, I wouldn't live to be past the age of 20. And I said I didn't care. I wasn't going to eat dead animals, but I guess I did because I went to college and decided to take a nutrition class. Now, we're talking back in the very early 70s. And there wasn't a whole lot on vegetarianism at the time, but there were some studies based on Seventh-day Adventists. And as I began reading those studies, what I found was not only was I not going to die, that these people had fewer heart attacks, lower rates of diabetes, lower blood pressure, lower rates of obesity, lower rates of breast cancer, everything that we were worrying about as major health concerns were lower in these people who did not eat meat. And so I decided I needed to tell the world about that. I decided to study nutrition, and I found that the best way to teach nutrition was to cook food for people and show people how tasty a plant-based diet could be. And that's when I began teaching vegetarian cooking and vegetarian nutrition. And so I had very popular classes teaching nutrition. I did that for 25 years. I actually ended up teaching with a doctor named Dean Ornish. He is a cardiologist who did the very first controlled study showing that a plant-based diet can reverse heart disease.
You know, Jennifer, you were so lucky to find the people that you did, because I first went vegetarian also in the 70s. And I found Adele Davis, who gave terrible, terrible advice, but she was a big guru at the time. And she wanted you to put milk powder and everything because she was so afraid you wouldn't get enough protein. And so I had you were very lucky that you found people who were doing it the right way.
Well, you know, I found Frances Moore Lepage, Diet for a Small Planet.
I did too. Yes, those were my two big books, Adele Davis and Frances Moore Lepage. But Frances Moore Lepage also had things wrong, even though she was coming from a great place.
She made it a lot harder than it needed to be. My husband still jokes when I put a plate down in front of him. He says, "Now, do we have the right proportions of grains for legumes?
We have the beans and the rice. And yes, it was very complicated. It was all very complicated. Who knew it was going to be so easy? That is a fascinating story. I'm so glad that I figured out that you were that same Jennifer Raymond. But I do really want to get up to the present day, because we want to talk about what's going on in Humboldt County, and which is fascinating. And you really, like, you've covered the activism front in so many different ways. But I imagine a lot of our listeners may have heard, bits and pieces of this story because it's been on social media and whatever. But I think we need to start at the beginning, because Miranda's rescue was a focus for you for a long time, I think. Can you just tell us what they were pretending to be, and what was its relationship with animal shelters in California, and when you started to find out maybe that wasn't true?
Well, when I moved up here, I recognized a terrible problem, which was that there was no low-cost spay and neuter in this county, which is a small rural county, was euthanizing more than 4,000 cats and dogs a year. And so I decided to start a spay and neuter program that got me pretty embedded in the whole rescue community. And one of those was Miranda's rescue. And he was by far the golden boy. And he actually was called upon by the sheriff's department numerous times when they needed to do large animal rescues. He'd head out with them with his horse trailer and load up the emaciated horses and so forth. And so he was just everybody's golden boy for animals. I was hearing rumors that indicated that that was not a true picture. I heard rumors that he actually, with his brother, would shoot animals and his brother would take them and bury them on his property. I heard that he would take dogs out with hunting parties and they'd hunt the dogs. I heard all sorts of rumors. I tried to figure out what was going on, but I couldn't get any traction. It wasn't until 2006 when another animal rescue person came to me all excited and told me that they were working with Miranda's rescue and that they were taking cats out to an abandoned cattle ranch that's about 15 miles out of town, up in the mountains in an area we call the Wildcat. And it's called the Wildcat in part because it's full of mountain lions, it's full of coyotes. And they were taking these cats to this ranch where nobody lived. There was an old barn there. They would dump a bag of dry cat food. They'd undo the carriers and the traps, release the cats, and leave. And they wouldn't come back until they had another load of cats. And I was horrified. I said, that is animal abandonment. I actually filed a complaint, a written complaint that I have to this day with the sheriff's department. And I never got a response. Nobody would ever do anything. I also wrote a letter to every single newspaper. Nobody ever followed up. Nobody printed it. Nobody called me for more information. Nothing. Shannon Miranda was the golden boy, and
Wow.
nobody was going to say anything negative about him. It was a very discouraging feeling.
Yeah, I'm
Is
sure.
is it true that you bought the house next door? And did you do
Yes,
that on purpose?
that was quite a bit later. Through the years after that incident, I kept hearing rumors. I started a spay neuter clinic, and we would have dogs in that were a year and a half old and unspayed. And they had gotten them at Miranda's rescue. And in California, it is illegal for a rescue to adopt out an unspayed or unaltered cat or dog. So again, I filed complaints with animal control, and all they would do is call Shannon and say, Jennifer Raymond is complaining about you again. And he would call me up and cuss me out. I realized I needed to get closer to I needed to see what was going on, because all these stories about dogs being shot, but where were they? I mean, I drove around to every parcel of land owned by his family to see if I could see piles of bones or skeletons or something. But, that was like looking for a needle in a haystack. So when the property next door came up for sale, I bought it. I was
Wow.
the very first one to go look at it. I made a full price offer, and 2 hours later, I was in escrow.
I love
That's
you.
amazing.
Like you are clearly a relentless person, and that's exactly what the animals need. That's
I am very blessed. I was in a position that financially I could do this. And I was very blessed because the property is beautiful, 6.5
Oh, good.
acres.
Oh,
with
good. At
a
least you didn't have to buy a terrible place.
No, with a very run down but great bones, beautiful old Italianate Victorian home on it.
Wow.
Well, that's
And
nice.
I love restoring old houses. That's the other
Oh.
thing that I do. It was 2 stories, and I could look down into the place where all the dogs he was taking in went. So I bought the house, and I began watching, and I saw vans coming in every week from various shelters, various sheriff's departments, various private rescues full of dogs. At the same time, I did a public record request to every single public shelter I could find in California, asking, how many dogs are you sending to Miranda's rescue? What is your contract? Please send a copy. And how much are you paying? And I did not get replies from certain shelters, particularly those that are run by private nonprofits, but I did get enough to learn that in 2025, he had taken in 635 large adult dogs from various shelters. Now, he was also taking in dogs from private rescues. I had no idea because I can't do a public record request to them. He was also taking in dogs from private individuals. Again, I don't know how many, but what I had now was a baseline. I know that he got at least 635 dogs. Again, mostly adult, mostly large.
And he was getting money too, right? I mean, that's what I mean. Obviously, always follow the money. Like all of these dogs came with money.
Yeah, $500 to $2,500 was what he was charging shelters to take a dog.
So these are public shelters that were paying him to take these.
Well, it's very sneaky. It was not the public shelters that were paying him. So in 2020, our governor, Gavin Newsom, fulfilled a campaign promise to end the euthanizing of adoptable healthy animals in California and allocated $50 million from the California budget to do so. What that 50 million, I thought it was going to be spaying and neutering. I was thrilled. It turns out what was done is correct shelter medicine went around to shelters, taught them how to build play yards and gave them money to do so, portalized cat cages, gave them money to do so, and set up a nonprofit partner to the shelter that could raise money to pull at-risk dogs out of shelters and send them to rescues where they would not be euthanized. And those were the dogs that were going to Miranda's
So
rescue.
well-meaning, but like
Yeah,
everything in government, you have to do a really careful job of administering it, and
yeah,
clearly, in some
exactly.
instances, that wasn't happening.
And we have no oversight in California, no central oversight agency of shelters and rescues. It is all local law enforcement. So when I was concerned about Miranda's, I'd call the local sheriff's department. They wouldn't do anything. In 2024, I actually went to the California Attorney General, complained. I contacted the State Department of Justice. They said, talk to local law enforcement. So we don't have anybody in California you can turn to directly and say, you need to go examine this rescue and what they're doing. So these nonprofits, Friends of Oakland Animal Shelter, Friends of Stanislaus Animal Shelter, etc., were the ones they would crowdfund, get the money to save Tuffy's life and send him up to Miranda's rescue. And what I couldn't help but wonder is, what do these people think is going to happen to them up here? We are a population of 130, a county of 135,000, very rural. Our median income is 30% below the median California income. In other words, poverty is big up here. Who's going to be adopting these big dogs? Our own private shelter is full of them.
I'm going to move this story forward a little bit because, first of all, this sounds like you should sell this story to Netflix because this is fascinating. But tell us the story of the midnight raid. Am I going too far ahead in chronological order?
So I learned how many dogs were coming in. I also learned that he did nothing to advertise those dogs. When those dogs came into the shelter, they were put in kennels at the very back behind a locked gate, and people were told they were vicious dogs. So they were not on any adoption platform. They weren't on Facebook. They weren't on his website. So how could they be being adopted? I knew something bad was happening. I was also watching to see if trucks were hauling out live or dead dogs. Never saw anything like that. Nothing until late last year, I noticed a huge backhoe in the driveway of the rescue, and that's unusual. The next morning when I drove in, I noticed in his back field a huge mound of dirt, a mountain of dirt with a big hole next to it. And I went, bingo. Now I know. I knew exactly at that moment what was happening with those dogs. I did not know how to prove it. I called law enforcement. I called lawyers. I called animal rescue groups. Everybody saying, I know he is killing dogs and burying them in this hole. What can I do? And everybody said, you can't do anything. It would be illegal for you to go onto his property. There's a huge hedge of blackberries between our two properties, but I had cut a tunnel through that hedge so that I could get up where I could see the hole very clearly. And I began taking pictures of this big mound of dirt. Now, this is how sick I am. My phone is full of pictures of dirt because I needed to know when the mound changed. You know, how am I going to remember what it looked like yesterday? So I went out one afternoon and I saw the mound. I looked at yesterday's picture and I saw that, yes, once again, the mound had changed. And I said, okay, he's buried things in this hole. He's moved the dirt. Jennifer, either you are going to do this or you better just give this thing up, because there is no other way besides breaking the law and trespassing that you are going to find out. And I realized at that moment that there are a lot of people through the ages who have broken the law for a higher moral cause. Sometimes that's what we have to do. So I waited until dark and I put on my headlamp and my gloves, got my wire snips, cut a hole in the fence, and I crawled out onto his property. Now, I didn't know if he had cameras that would be watching me or vicious dogs on the property. It was about 25 feet that I had to crawl out to this hole, and the hole was about 5 feet in the ground. And I couldn't help but think that, once I jump in this hole, if he comes out, he could just shoot me and bury me. Nobody would ever know what had happened.
He could.
But I started
And probably would.
I started digging, and I just was digging away. And fortunately, the dirt was soft because it had been dumped in that afternoon. And I finally got down to fur. And I kept digging, and pretty soon I uncovered a leg, and then an ear, and then a blood-covered muzzle. I took photographs the entire time. I have progressions of my digging, so I would have evidence. And so I got out, I covered the dog back up. I didn't want anybody to know I had been there. Crawled back over to my property. And at that point, I called my friend Jenna, who has been working on this with me. And she was out of town. But I told her, Jenna, I just went into the hole and I've uncovered a dead dog. And she burst into tears. But Jen is the technical genius of our partnership. And she is also a little bit pushier than I am, and she has great connections. She called a contact of hers in the sheriff's department. This is 10 o'clock at night. And she said, we have to meet with you. Shannon Miranda is burying dogs on his property. We need a meeting tomorrow.
Wow.
So we got the meeting and we went in. I took in all the information I'd collected, the public record requested data of how many dogs had been sent to him. Also, a lot of information about his tax returns and irregularities there. And I took the pictures of the dog that I had uncovered. And we talked with the sheriff's department. They were obviously concerned, but they didn't know quite what to do about it. And they said, well, we're going to have to look into this. And it was one of the lowest points in my life. I mean, I felt like I have just risked my life, and I'm showing you pictures of this blood-covered dog buried in a hole, and you're telling me you can't do something about it? And Jenna was saying that out loud. And she said, you've got to get out there, or they're going to kill more dogs. And
I'm gonna just jump in for a second because
Sure.
that was a lot, and I just want to give our audience a chance to kind of catch up and breathe for a moment, because you're talking about digging into a hole and finding dead dog pieces, and I just first of all can't even imagine what that must have been like for you, Jennifer. But your tenacity is so inspiring, and I, of course, as someone who now cares deeply about you, seeing you and hearing you talk about this, were you okay physically, mentally, and legally at this point? Like, what was going on for for you.
I'd broken the law. I could have been arrested for trespass.
And
And
were you?
No. I had decided at the moment I decided to go into the hole, I thought, if I'm arrested, I would love nothing better than having to go to court and give sworn testimony about why I had trespassed. That will get this county's attention about Shannon Miranda. That may be how I have to do it.
Okay, but so and you just told us that the cops basically more or less blew you off. And so what happened next? How did you rattle the cage?
I mean, we're not, and the case is not done. I just want to make that clear. Things are still ongoing, but what happened next? Yes.
So what happened? Jenna and I walked out of there and we both were really discouraged. And Jenna said, we're getting trail cams. We're going to film him dumping dogs. And she went out and bought 5 trail cams and put them up in various locations all along my blackberry hedge. And we waited a few days later, one of the cams caught a video of him going out there, but it wasn't clear enough to really see what was going on. So we went out, readjusted the cams, and she called me in the afternoon, actually, April 26th at 2:30. She called, she said, Jennifer, he's dumping dogs, because she had it live coming in on her phone. And so we headed out there and we decided, of course, right then and there, we're waiting till dark and then we're going out into the hole again. And so we got our shovels and our headlamps and our gloves and we waited until dark. And then the 2 of us crawled out and got into the hole and we started digging. And again, we dug about a foot down and we started uncovering a body. And even without saying it to each other, we knew we weren't just taking pictures this time. We were taking those dogs. And so as we uncovered each dog, we pulled them out of the hole and dragged them back to my property. They were still warm. You could feel in their groin. They were still soft and they were still warm. It was that soon after they'd been killed. There were 2 puppies that only had baby teeth, which means they were less than 3 months old.
So what have been the legal actions taken so far?
Can I just, how they were killed? They were shot? Is that how they had been killed?
Yeah, they had noticeable holes in their heads.
Okay.
One had a hole through its eye. They were all bleeding from their mouths, from their noses, and from their ears. And we dragged them over to my property. We scanned them all with a microchip reader, got their microchip numbers. All but 2 were microchipped. And we loaded them into a truck. Jenna called her contact at the sheriff's department and said, you need to meet me down there tomorrow morning at 8:00. We have 8 dead dogs for you. And he said, well, we don't have any place to put them. So bless her heart, she took them home and she put them all in bags with labels and put them in a freezer. And it took the sheriff about 2 days to finally figure out what they were going to do with them. And they came and got the bodies, and that evening they raided him for the first time. They only raided the house and the rescue office, and everybody was shocked that they didn't go out into the field. That was on the 1st of May. And then we all started waiting because nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened. They kept saying, we're working on it. But, after all of our experience and my experience with the Humboldt Sheriff's Department, I wasn't sure that they weren't going to just drop this like they always had. So on the 23rd of June, I got a call from Jenna at 6:30 in the morning saying they're on the property. They have heavy equipment. They're starting to dig because our trail cams were still working. And so we headed back over there and watched as they began excavating, looking for bodies. And they marked a huge area of the field. They used ground penetrating radar, and they marked a huge area wherever they saw an abnormality, but they only dug in one small area. So when you read that they dug up 117 dogs, that's just a fraction of what I'm sure is out there. They dug in one hole. I know of where another hole was that they never even touched. My guess is thousands of dogs are buried out there. So once again, we are waiting. The thing that was different the second time around is that the California Attorney General's office was part of the investigation. The FBI was part of the investigation. California
Yeah.
Department of Justice, the California Department of Agriculture, and the IRS is also involved.
And
So
you've started to get really impressive press too. There was just a big article in the San Francisco Chronicle, right? I mean,
yes, yeah.
that's
Well,
key.
the day they started digging, my property was like a fair with, I mean, there were so many reporters and cameras and drones there. It was quite the day. And, people kept asking me, how are you feeling? And it's so funny because my emotions are like totally opposite ends of the spectrum. I was thrilled. I'm overjoyed. I'm incredibly relieved. And I'm also just sick at heart every time they pulled another
Yeah.
body out of that hole. So it's been a very strange experience to feel like finally this guy is exposed for what he is, which is one of the most evil individuals I have ever known. Because the thing about it is, I did it for the animals, but his betrayal, not only of the animals, but of hundreds of people who trusted him to care for those animals. If you don't care at all for animals, what about the people whose hearts are broken? People who drove 14 hours to bring a dog that they'd found that they couldn't keep up to him, paid him $3,000, believing that he would find a home or keep this dog for the rest of its natural life. It's just sick.
Awful.
And when you see the picture of his mansion in Las Vegas, it is so ostentatious. And I mean, what he spent the money on, it's just, and it's all blood money.
But I know that you are justifiably thrilled that this has been exposed and it's getting all this press and attention. But there's still legal work to be done, right? He's still there. He hasn't been arrested. I
That's
mean,
right.
and do you have any updates on what's happening? Well, and I mean, I understand there might be civil suits too. I mean, it sounds like he defrauded a lot of people. Has anything happened yet?
There has been one civil suit filed by one of the largest private dog rescues that I'm guessing sent a lot of dogs up here. It is called Rocket Dog Rescue. They are in Oakland, and Oakland Animal Services sent in the year to 2025, they sent 206
God.
dogs here. Now, if Oakland Animal Services sent that many, I'm going to guess that Rocket Dog Rescue sent a very large number because they were pulling from Oakland Animal Services, and they have filed a civil suit, and I'm thrilled about that.
I'm sure there will be more.
There is
I mean,
an
it's still
attorney-
early days.
It
This
is
all
still
just
early
happened.
days. There is an attorney who is looking into doing a class action suit, and there are a number of people that he is in contact with. And as far as the criminal aspect of it, they say they're working on it. What we were told by the sheriff about a month ago is that once they file charges, they only have 10 days to add anything to it. And so they are wanting to make sure that they have everything. And they have been contacted by hundreds of people with stories, and they're following up with all those
And
people.
it's a small rural county that they probably don't have that much staff, and now
And
they have to handle the biggest case in California.
exactly.
Yeah.
It is a very small, underfunded department with lots of other stuff going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And so I am trusting that they are indeed working on it, that we simply need to be patient. The thing that is so difficult is that he still has control of the animals that remain on the property. After the first bust, when this issue first arose, lots of people came to the rescue and adopted dogs, and some people adopted cats. And then word started getting out that those people were coming because they wanted to rescue dogs from him. And Shannon got his feelings hurt. And so now he will not adopt to anybody, from what I understand, who is there because they think he's done bad things. So if you are a person who believes that he is guilty or has done these heinous things to animals, he won't adopt to you. So as far as I know, there are 30 to 40 dogs still there. The dogs live in terrible conditions. They live outdoors year round. Some of them live in enclosures that have no roofs on them. They're fed dry kibble once a day. Their kennels get washed out about once a week. Well, the dogs are in them. They get soaking wet. And nobody ever comes to walk the dogs, throw a ball for them, talk to them, play with them. They just sit there. And anybody who has ever run a shelter or a rescue know the dogs go kennel crazy in
Of
circumstances like.
course. Of course.
And so I'm watching every day as these dogs just sit, becoming potentially less adoptable, less mentally well, and we can't do anything about it. I've talked with the sheriff. Our sheriff maintains that they are Shannon's property. I maintain that they are not his property. They were surrendered to the nonprofit. So I am currently filing a lawsuit with the California Attorney General to maintain that that nonprofit needs to lose its nonprofit status and be shut down. And when that happens, all of its property, which in California includes the animals, needs to go to another certified, approved nonprofit. Then that's what I'm trying to do.
Wow. Unbelievable amount of work. Unbelievable story. Yeah. I would not want you after me, Jennifer. I sure wouldn't. And the only thing more powerful than a relentless woman on a mission for animals is two relentless women
Yes,
on a mission
yes.
for animals.
Yes, if you met Jenna, you would know how true that is. She is one powerful woman.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Well, it is my pleasure. Thank you for being interested. It has been very gratifying, the reaction of people to this. And my hope is that as a result of what has happened here, there will be some things that change. One of them is recognizing, unfortunately, Miranda's is not the only bad rescue. There
It
are,
can't be.
unfortunately, many of them out there. And they are there because we have not addressed the true problem with companion animals, which is too many of them are being born, and there are simply not enough responsible homes for them. We have never really put our money where our mouths are and addressed prevention. Let's prevent these animals from being born so they don't end up in shelters. They don't end
Absolutely.
up on euthanasia lists. They don't need to be transported 14 hours or across the country to another rescue or shelter where supposedly their lives will be saved. We need to make spaying and neutering affordable for every animal whose owner wants it. People say, well, let's have ordinances saying that you have to spay neuter. I say, no, that's a stick. Let's give them a carrot. Let's say, hey, we will spay or neuter your animal. If you can afford to pay something, great, we'll take it. If you can't afford to pay anything, fine, we will do it anyway. But we need the money for that. And unfortunately, all the grants for spaying and neutering dried up about 20 years ago. So I am on a mission to get money for spaying and neutering. I'm going to Sacramento and going to be working with the state of California. I'm already working with my local board of supervisors to get money to prevent the problem so that we don't have to be talking about this again.
That's amazing. How can our listeners and our viewers support your efforts? Is there anything that you're asking for from the public?
If the public wants to make donations to Humboldt Critters Without Litters, I would welcome that. It would be very helpful. It's HumboldtCrittersWithoutLitters.com is our website. There's a donate button.
Great.
And anything people can give will help us because our philosophy is just what I said. When people call, we tell them what our prices are, and our prices are simply what it costs us to do the surgery. But if somebody at that point says, oh, I don't have that amount of money to spay my cat, we say to them, what can you afford? And if they say $10, we'll spay the cat for $10. If they say 50, we'll do it for 50. Whatever they don't pay, we need to make up for with donations and with grants. And as I said, grants are very few and far between these days. So any donations will go directly for spaying and neutering animals that need it.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Amazing.
That's great.
Well, I know you're going to stick on with us a little bit so that we could ask you about your early career as a vegan author for our Flock, our bonus segment. It goes to our Flock only. But Jennifer, I just want to thank you again for sharing a little bit of your story. It's such an incredible, you're so badass. And I just want to say, and I hope this is okay for me to say, because I know you and Mariann were just chatting a little bit before we hit record. And if I can say, you're both women of a certain age, and I consider myself, like, to some extent, a woman of a certain age, but it is very, very inspiring to be sitting here with both of you who I consider badass in your own way as far as changing the world for animals. And I just think that the future is, everyone says it's in young people's hands, but when I see the work you're doing, like cutting through a blackberry bush and putting yourself in a hole, like, I'm like, no, I think it's like the women of a certain age who are unlocking the door to animal liberation. So thank you for doing that. And we hope that you keep us posted and keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. And I know you'll get support by way of our listeners. So thank you for putting the story out there.
Thanks to everybody for that. And yes, the other thing for me about this is that it is about dispelling the myth of ageism, because when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I thought 75 was very old. And I know
It's not as old as 76.
at 75 and 76, you are still badass.
That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, Jennifer Raymond, thank you for joining us today. And for those of you listening and watching, thank you for being with us. You can become a Flock member at ourhenhouse.org/support. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Our Hen House.